The way I look at this trade market for Shedeur Sanders, all last week, it felt like everyone was going down the road of trying to get rid of him or trying to trade him in some sort of way. And Spencer, I just don't see it. I don't see there being enough value there if we're going to do that to begin with anyway. And I see it higher for the Browns to keep a quarterback on this roster where he's in one of the few spots. If you worry about a backup quarterback being a distraction, I don't care about Deshawn Watson and whether or not he has a distraction. Sorry, Deshawn, you haven't warranted any sort of play in a Browns uniform that makes...
He hasn't won the job. He hasn't lost it either. And somewhere in a building in Berea, Ohio, two men are deciding the next chapter of his career, and neither of them seems to know how it ends. For a kid who was supposed to be the most controversial draft pick in recent NFL memory, Shedeur Sanders has done something nobody expected. He's gone quiet. Not in the sense that he's invisible, everybody's still talking about him, but quiet in the sense that he's just working. While the trade rumors swirl, while the cameras chase Deshawn Sanders' son for a reaction, while talk radio fills hour after hour debating his future, Shedeur has reportedly just kept showing up, throwing routes, watching film, letting his footwork do the talking that his mouth used to do back in college. And that's the thing about this story. It's not really about a fifth-round pick anymore. It's about a franchise that has lied to its fans so many times that nobody knows what to believe, and a young quarterback who might be the only honest answer left on the roster.
Well, and that's the big thing for me because, first of all, I don't think it makes any sense to trade Shedeur. Maybe when we get to the end of training camp, if he's not named the starter, because at that point, all bets are off with Andrew Berry. Andrew Berry is the last couple of years, his whole thing has been you get to the end of training camp and you're flipping a quarterback.
Well, all right, so let's play that for a second, though. Okay. All right. So you trade Shedeur Sanders for a fourth-round pick or third-round pick, even if he can even get that. I don't even know that he can.
I don't think he can. But
I don't think so either. So anyway, you
rewind to the offseason. The Browns spent months trying to convince everyone that Deshawn Watson was still the guy. The vision was sold over and over. Then the calendar turned, training camp got closer, and reporters who covered this team every single day started noticing something nobody in the front office wanted to admit out loud. Shedeur Sanders looked better, steadier, more in control of the offense than the $230 million man he was supposedly competing against. That's not a small thing to say about a second-year player who fell to the fifth round on draft day for reasons that still don't fully make sense to anyone watching tape. So now, here's the tension everyone's chewing on. If you're Cleveland, do you trade him? Some insiders floated it, some fans wanted it. The logic seems simple on paper. Sell high, get draft capital, move forward. But peel back that logic and it falls apart fast. Because what exactly would the Browns be selling high on? A guy they can't even get a third-round pick for? A guy who, in an ugly 3-13 season, still managed to help this team win 3 games as a rookie with almost no training camp reps?
that's the thing. Like, if that's what you're trying to sell the fan base is, hey, we got Deshawn Watson for this season to see how it goes, and then we're going to pivot to Dylan Gabriel. I just don't think that sells to anybody. I also think if you have a quarterback asset that you at least are curious about to see what it's going to be, why would you just give that up when you have a year kind of gap to figure out if this guy can be anything before you then have to answer that question permanently in 2027? Like,
exactly.
It just doesn't make any sense to me.
No, it doesn't. It's stupid is what it is. Sorry to your son listening. But like it's just...
You don't trade away your only real insurance policy. Not when the starter next to him hasn't proven anything in years. And that's where the real story lives. Not in some front office fantasy about draft picks, but in the brutal psychological standoff happening on the practice field every single day. 2 quarterbacks, 1 job, and a head coach who, according to people who've actually been there watching it, can't bring himself to name a starter because the gap between them just isn't big enough to ignore. Picture it. Deshawn Watson, former #1 overall talent, former Pro Bowler, the guy this franchise mortgaged its future for, out there next to a kid who was considered such a non-prospect that 32 teams passed on him not once, not twice, but over and over on draft day. And somehow, by the accounts coming out of these practices, it's close. Not Shedeur dominating, not some Hollywood underdog moment where he throws 5 touchdowns and the decision makes itself. Just close. Competitive, real.
Possibility that Shedeur Sanders can start for this team going into the next season rather than get traded. And the biggest reason for that is what we've already said about the other guy he's going against. Neither of us have any faith whatsoever that Deshaun Watson is going to be a viable quarterback option for the Cleveland Browns for an extended period of time. He might have a game sprinkled in there where he looks like some older version of himself for a half or whatever it is, but he's never going to be that guy again. And if none of us have faith in that, then, and that's the thing, this quarterback competition
That's the part that should scare Cleveland the most. Because when a former franchise quarterback can't separate himself from a guy in year 2 who was barely supposed to make the roster, that tells you everything about where Watson's career actually is. Flashes of the old magic, sure. A few throws here and there that remind people of 2020 in Houston, pinpoint passes, veteran anticipation, the football IQ that made him special once. And then, right behind it, the version everyone in Cleveland has learned to dread. Balls in the dirt, picks, plays where he just doesn't see the field the way he used to. Glimpses of greatness, surrounded by reminders of why this experiment hasn't worked. Meanwhile, Shedeur's path looks almost like the opposite arc. Not flashy, not viral, just steady growth that's hard to fake. People who watch this spring up close talk about his footwork specifically, cleaner mechanics, better timing, an offense that simply functions more often when he's the one running it. No miracle throws, no social media moment, just a quarterback getting a little bit better every single week in a league that chews up and spits out players who don't. And here's where the fans come in, because this isn't just a quarterback competition anymore. It's a referendum on trust. Trust in a front office that's lied before, trust in a coaching staff that won't commit to an answer, trust in an organization that for years has asked its fans to believe in things that never came true.
Keep doing a good job and let me know what you think.
All right, thank you, Vito. Appreciate you as always. Yeah, I mean, it's pretty clear to me what you should do, but I think it's clear to you as well.
Yeah, I've been in the camp that Shedeur should start the season this entire time. For me, it comes down to just simply there's nothing left for me to learn about Deshawn Watson. Like I have nothing left to learn. He's not going to reclaim that 2020 version of himself. That's an area as we talk about whether.
Remember the supplemental draft drama that never even happened? Remember being told Watson was the guy, right up until he wasn't? Remember the front office publicly backing players one month and shipping them out the next? That history is exactly why so many fans refuse to take anything this team says at face value, including the recent buzz that Shedeur has genuinely outplayed Watson this offseason. Is it real? Or is it a smokescreen designed to boost his trade value before a deadline nobody's even talking about yet? Here's the uncomfortable truth, the one that cuts through all the noise. There's no version of this where hyping up Shedeur actually helps a trade. None. If Cleveland genuinely wanted to ship him out, the last thing they do is tell the world their backup quarterback is outperforming the guy they paid a fortune to keep. So either the front office is running one of the strangest manipulation campaigns in recent NFL memory, or they're just telling the truth for once. And given everything we know about this organization's track record of protecting its $230 million investment at all costs, the simpler explanation is usually the right one. They actually believe in this kid.
Now picture this from the ownership chair. A franchise still trying to wash the stain off what's been called the worst trade in modern NFL history. A new stadium rising in Brook Park, a legacy on the line, a fan base that has watched quarterback after quarterback come and go since the Browns' last real era of hope. Somewhere in that building, there's a decision being made that isn't just about football. It's about whether this franchise is finally willing to stop chasing sunk costs and start building something real. If they're being honest with themselves, the answer is staring them in the face. Why dump assets into salvaging a contract that's already been paid in full? The money is gone either way. Watson's deal isn't getting cheaper by playing him one more season just to see. That's not strategy. That's stubbornness dressed up as patience. And that brings us to the moment that might define this entire era of Cleveland Browns football. If you've made it this far, you already know how invested people are in this story. And honestly, that's exactly why stories like this deserve to be told the right way. If you want more deep dives like this one, breaking down the real stories behind the headlines, make sure you're subscribed, because this Shedeur Sanders story is just getting started.
Because somewhere out there, a young quarterback who was doubted his entire pre-draft process, questioned, picked apart, dropped further than anyone predicted, is quietly doing the one thing that always shuts critics up. He's winning, just not loudly. He's improving, just not dramatically. And he's putting Cleveland in a position where the easiest, safest, most defensible decision is also the one that scares the front office the most. Admitting that the kid they got in the 5th round might be better than the quarterback they paid like a franchise savior. This isn't a redemption arc yet. It's not a Disney ending. Shedeur hasn't been named the starter. Nothing is decided. But the gap that was supposed to separate a former number 1 pick from a 5th round rookie has somehow disappeared.
And that silence, that uncertainty, that refusal from the coaching staff to just name a starter already, says more than any press conference ever could. Cleveland built a quarterback room on desperation and ego. What might save them now is a kid nobody believed in. And maybe that's the most Cleveland Browns story of all.